Hey everyone, welcome to our video about downloading your original photos from Shutterfly. I'm Kim Zialich, the owner of Family Photo Solutions, and I'm going to guide you through the process today. It's important to download the original versions of your photos to make sure that you get your photos back in full resolution and the biggest size possible. We want our biggest photos back because we can always save smaller versions of them, but we can't go back and make them bigger. The size of our photos matters when it comes to printing. A larger photo with a higher resolution has more information, so when we print it, we get a clearer image. Downloading a tiny version of your photos may mean that you will never be able to print them clearly again. Now, before we start, if you have a copy of these original photos stored anywhere else, then don't bother trying to download from Shutterfly because Shutterfly makes it tricky to download the original copies of your photos. But if you think these are the only copies you have of these photos, then let's go get them back. Here are 20 steps that we need to follow to retrieve your photos. Yep, 20. I broke the process down into manageable steps so it's easy to follow along and to make sure that we retrieve all of your photos. Okay, let's get started. Log into your Shutterfly account from your computer. Select Photos in the top menu bar. I've circled it here in red. Top where it says hi and your name. Mine says, hi Kim. It's where that blue arrow is pointing. This will open up a drop-down box. Select My Photo Settings. I've circled this option in the list. Now within My Photo Settings, choose Personal Information and look at the email address that Shutterfly has recorded for you. Make sure that you can access this email address, as this is where Shutterfly will be sending all your download links. If you cannot access this email address, then you need to go and change it now. Still under My Photo Settings, we're going to select Usage and write down the total number of photos in your Shutterfly account. We're going to refer back to this number at the very end to make sure that you got everything downloaded. And then click Done to return to the Photos page. Select All Photos at the top of the grid of photos. It's where the blue arrow is pointing on the left-hand side. This page will now display all the photos that you have in your Shutterfly account. Next, we're going to select Sort by Date Taken over on the right-hand side where the other blue arrow is pointing. You will notice a timeline running down the right-hand side of the page and that your photos are organized with the most current photos first. You will also notice that your photos are divided into sections. My top section says November 2022, and this is in the red circle right under the All Photos circle. These are the most current photos in my personal Shutterfly account. Your date will represent the most current photos in your account. Beside the November 2022, you can see a little button that shows a check mark and the number 98. This means that I have 98 photos saved in my Shutterfly account from November 2022. And then see the third red circle underneath the November 2022? It is circling a subsection heading that says Sun 6. When I put my cursor over the photos under here, a button that has a check mark and the number 54 shows up beside the Sun 6. This means that I created 54 photos on Sunday, November the 6th, and then I later uploaded them to Shutterfly. You can see my photos here. They're kind of odd pictures. I was making a photo book, so these are actually pictures of the pages that are going in the photo book. We set the sort to date taken so that your photos will be displayed under the dates that they were taken, not the dates that they were uploaded to Shutterfly. Sorting by date taken will make it easier to organize our photos when we download them. And that's the first 9 steps. They weren't so bad. We're almost halfway through our 20-step process. So let's talk about the tricky parts. The first tricky thing is that Shutterfly will only download 500 photos at a time. We have to be really organized to make sure that we download all the photos. The second tricky part is that we have to request the photos be downloaded twice to get the original copies. We have to initiate a first download and then tell it to go back and download the original copies of those photos. And the third tricky part is that the downloads will come in zip files, and often in multiple zip files, without any way to identify which photos that zip file contains. Tricky, right? Okay, here's how we're going to keep it all under control. Step 10. We're going to make ourselves a checklist to help us keep track of the process. We need a checklist with 7 columns. Yep, 7, and you're going to need all 7. Now, the easiest way to download is by year. The first column in our checklist will record the year that we are downloading. In the second column, write down the total number of photos that you have in that year. Move through your photo grid and add up the numbers beside each of the months in the year that you are downloading. The third column in this checklist will say first download requested, and we'll put a check mark here when we make that first request. The fourth column will say originals requested, and we'll check here when that request is made. The fifth column will say download requested, and yep, we're going to check here when we finally get to request the download. The sixth column is going to say downloaded and confirmed. When we finally receive our downloaded files, we'll save the photos and check the totals against our download request. At that point, you can put your check mark in column 6 to say that everything got downloaded and you checked all the totals. The seventh column will be for notes. We're going to use this for anything that you need to keep track of as you download. Now, remember, Shutterfly only lets us download 500 photos at a time. If you have 1,200 photos from 2022, it's going to take 3 downloads to retrieve them all. In my checklist, I would put 2022 in the first column and 1,200 in the second column. Then, underneath the year 2022, in that first column, I'm going to list the 3 downloads in their own rows. So I'm going to make a row for download 1, the next row for download 2, and another row for download 3. Now, as I request those downloads, I can record the number of photos in each download in the second column, and I can keep track of all the steps for each download separately. Here's an example of a checklist with multiple downloads in each year. 2022 has a total of 1,200 photos, so it will take 3 downloads to retrieve them all. I've listed the 3 downloads in their own rows under the year 2022, and I've added the number of photos in each download in the second column of the download row. This will help you match up your downloads as you receive them. The downloads of 489 photos plus 420 photos plus that third download of 291 photos equals the 1,200 photos that we had for the total for that year. Okay, we're all set up, so let's get started downloading. And we're going to select the pictures to download. I recommend that you download 1 year at a time. If your year has less than 500 pictures, you can click on the little button with the check mark and the number that's beside each month in that year to select all the pictures. When you select the photos, they get an orange outline and have an orange check mark like these ones. You can keep track of how many photos you've selected in the top right corner where it says View Selected. Mine says View Selected 100. I've circled it in red. If you have more than 500 pictures in the year, I would begin by selecting a month at a time until you get close to the 500 maximum. Write Download 1 under the year in your checklist and record the number of photos in that download in the second column of your checklist. In the Notes section, in column 7, you should write down the months included in that download. And now, with a group of photos selected, click the Download button. It's the cloud with the arrow pointing down. The blue arrow is pointing to it. You will get a message telling you your photos are being prepared for download, and you'll receive an email when it's done. Check that the email address is one that you can access. Put a check mark in the third column of your checklist indicating the first download has been requested. Then click the button that says Got it. Now you're going to watch your email for a note from Shutterfly. The note says your files are ready to be downloaded, and then they'll show you a little collection of pictures included in that download. At the very bottom, it will say Download Number Photos, and then a great big orange button that says Download, and some little tiny text underneath that says Need the original files? If you click the Download button, you will get a smaller versions of your photos returned to you. Hold out for the originals. Instead of clicking that big orange download button, we're going to click on the text underneath it that says, Need the original files. You will be taken back to the Shutterfly website where you'll see the message saying, Initiate original photo transfer. Don't be taken in by the big orange button that says, Get high resolution. These are not your original photos. Click on the button that says Prepare Originals. You will get the message that says they're preparing your photos and will email you when it's ready. Put a check mark in the fourth column of your checklist because you've now initiated the Originals download. That first email notification from Shutterfly should have come fairly quickly, but this second email can take a few days to show up. You may want to initiate your next downloads now. When you receive the next Shutterfly email, it will say your files are ready to be downloaded and show you a few pictures from the download. At the very bottom, it will say Download Number Original Photos and a big orange download button. Match up the number of photos with one of the downloads that you've requested. Put a check mark in the fifth column of your checklist. You can now finally request the download. Hit the orange download button. And guess what happened? You will be taken back to the Shutterfly website where you'll see a message saying that your originals are ready. Photos will be in this message, and it will show the zip files associated with this request. Go to your checklist and match up the number of photos with one of your downloads. In the Notes section, write down the name of the zip files. My little download here of 100 photos came in 2 separate zip files. Now click on the download button for each of the zip files, and we're going to wait for them to download. While you're waiting, you can create a folder in your Pictures folder on your computer and call it something like Shutterfly Downloads. And then within that folder, make a folder for each of the years that you're going to be downloading. When the zip files show up in your Downloads folder, you can go and move those zip files into the appropriate year folder. Now, extract the photos from the zip files and delete the zip files. Throughout this process, there are going to be a lot of zip files coming, so be sure to move them into the appropriate year folder, extract your photos right away, and then delete the zip files. Now, the photos are not in order within those zip files, so you will not be able to confirm that you've received all of your photos until all the zip files have downloaded for that year. Put a check mark beside each zip file that you've listed on your checklist as you extract the photos from it. Once you've received all the photos for a year, you can log into your Shutterfly account and confirm that you have everything. I like to check the number of photos I received against the number that Shutterfly says I have for that year, and then do a little spot check to make sure that I have them all. I also like to check the size of a few photos. If you originally uploaded full-sized photos, they should be more like a few megabytes in size, not just a tiny handful of kilobytes. Now, at the very beginning, we wrote down the total number of photos in your Shutterfly account. When you are done all of the downloading for all of the years, you can check your year totals and add them up to make sure that you match this total number that you wrote down at the beginning. And that's it. We made it. Downloading your original photos from Shutterfly will be easier if you follow the process and if you are methodical. Work 1 year at a time. Use your checklist. Check your totals and be patient. Some of these downloads can take a few days to show up, and that's where using your checklist can help you keep everything under control. It's quite a process, and I suggest you first work through the entire process with the photos from a single year. Once you've been through the entire process, you can certainly initiate all your remaining downloads at the same time. Or, having been through it, you may choose to continue to work on a single year at a time, just to make sure that you keep it all straight. We have some time before Shutterfly begins deleting accounts, but I highly recommend that you start this downloading process now. And to make it easier in the future, don't count on these type of storage sites to protect the original copies of your photos. Keep a copy of your photos completely under your control. Then, if something changes, something happens, and these photos get deleted from this kind of site, it's no big deal because your originals are safe somewhere else. And you've got them backed up in 2 other places, right? Here we go. We're all set to recover your original photos. If you would like to download a written set of these instructions, then come on over and sign up for our monthly newsletter. I will have a link to written instructions in each newsletter up to the end of 2023. You can sign up for the newsletter on our website, familyphotosolutions.ca. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that your downloading goes smoothly.